This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. Are we ready to begin?
Good morning, Chair Bailey. Just one more moment. Councilmember Leonard just arrived.
Yeah, I know. Thanks.
Okay.
Good morning, Councilmember. Careful of the wires.
Yeah. Everything good? Sit down. We're in a definite pathway right now. It's a beautiful decision. Very good.
Hey, for all those in the boardroom, you might just want to mute until you're ready to begin, just so we don't have a loud mic.
Good morning, Mayor Cold Iron here, checking in, making sure my my microphone's working.
You're working, council member. Welcome.
Or is maybe
Chair Bailey,
Yes.
while we're waiting, can we work on a resolution regarding the Miami Dolphins? I see your shirt there.
Yes.
Can we do something from this regional planning council?
We definitely should. And usually I would have on a suit, but I happen to be in DC for the Congressional Black Caucus, their foundation event today, and we start off with a golf event. So that's why I'm wearing I'm supporting South Florida in DC.
Right. Well, we need to do something to support the Dolphins. Anything we can do.
Yes. Great. Are we ready in the conference room?
Are we live now in the room? We are.
We are live in the room.
Mr. Chair, this is Sam Gordon. If you can see me, just for the record, we're missing one member present, but given the fact that we have an executive committee in formation in this room, you can do business publicly and take action publicly, both under the rules of the road that govern the Regional Planning Council. And as we obtain another member physically in the room, we'll also meet with the requirements of section 120.525 as well. So we can proceed as an executive committee with the expanded authority of others who are dialing in, videoing in to actually be present and to vote.
Right. Sam, is there any motion or anything need to occur for that to happen?
The answer is that as the executive committee, we have, of course, the chair is present. The first vice chair is not present. The immediate past chair is not present. We have the second vice chair present by video. The treasurer is physically present in the room, and the secretary, Senator Garcia, is absent. So the answer is if you can proceed as if you were the executive committee, and by motion you can accept the presence of all council members, either in person or otherwise, as expanded members of the executive committee, which entitles you by your rules to voting.
Okay, let's go. So we will now begin the South Florida Regional Planning Council October 25th meeting as the executive committee. In advance, I want to apologize for my attire. I'm in Washington, D.C. for Congressional Black Caucus, their foundation event, and it started off this morning with a golf tournament. So usually you would see me in a suit, but you happen to see me today in a polo. Our meeting can be accessed from our website. This meeting is being recorded. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you're dialing in, please mute and unmute yourself by dialing *6. If you wish to be recognized by me, we encourage you to please place a comment in the chat box and we'll definitely get to you. If you're a member of the public and would like to make a comment, I will announce when the public comments will be heard. If you're appearing as caller or by phone number in the attendees list, please update your name by right-clicking your name and identifying yourself, or we can change it for you. On today's agenda, in addition to the consent agenda, item 3B, we will be discussing Miami-Dade County 21-02 ESR proposed related to two amendments, CDMP 202100003 related to the development of proposed South Dade Logistics and Technology District east of the Turnpike and outside the urban development boundary, and CDMP 2021008, the new private property rights element pursuant to section 163.3177, subsection 6I of the Florida statute. If you wish to provide public comment, we can request that you please email us. You can get that address from our site to indicate that you wish to provide public comment. Please indicate your name, address, phone number, email, who you're representing, and the topic that you wish to address. Additionally, on the meeting agenda link, you can access a PDF form where you can fill it out and email us. You can also indicate your desire to speak in the chat box. But please, we're going to make sure everyone can see it. And so if you wish to speak, either go to our site and email us, or also put a comment in the chat box. You can also, there we go. So for today's meeting, we'll be limited to the council's area of review as a commenting agency pursuant to the Florida statute is to identify the following. So these are the only things that we will be speaking as a council on for the item. Diverse effects on the resources and facilities identified in the SRPP, and 2, extra jurisdictional impacts that will be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan of any affected local government within the region. Anything outside of that area, we will not be commenting on today. So here's how we're gonna go. We're gonna allow our staff to present, and then we'll allow the proposer to present. We will not be limiting them today because I think it's to make sure that we allow time. Could we mute the person? Thank you. All right, so we will now have our Pledge of Allegiance. Member Cold Iron, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. George, would you please call roll of the executive committee?
Cold Iron,
Here.
Corradino. Excused. Fur.
Here.
Garcia. Miller. Excused. Gilbert. Goldberg.
Here.
Kaufman.
Here.
Leonard.
Here.
Martinez. Monestein. Excused. Ross. Excused. Udine.
Here.
Ziotti. Here. Andriotta.
Got more on for Andriotta.
Thank you. Mayors. Excused. Wynn.
Here.
Bailey.
Present. And we have a quorum. In front of you, you have.
Physical quorum as well for the record, Mr. Chair, under Chapter 120. You've met the requirements and you have now expanded beyond the executive committee.
Thank you. Okay, you have your council agenda in front of you, and we're gonna change the order of it slightly. We're gonna move the financial report below the proposed items. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as stated?
Second.
Okay, it was moved by, state your name.
Ziotti.
It was moved by Councilmember Mayor Ziotti and seconded by,
Udine.
with me, sorry.
Udine.
Udine. The item has been moved, properly second. Are there any comments? All in favor of moving our agenda?
Aye.
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 Any opposition? All right, we now have our agenda, onto our action items. We're gonna start with, Sam, will you please call the comp plan numbers?
I will. For the record, Mr. Chair and members of the council and those members of the public who've dialed in or logged in for the purposes of attending today, item number 3B relates to the proposed comp plan numbers as follows. Number 1, City of Miramar 21-02 ESR. Number 2 is North Bay Village 21-01 ESR. City of Parkland 21-01 ESR. City of Pompano Beach, Florida 21-01 ESR. And the City of South Miami, 2101 ESR. The Town of Southwest Ranches, 21-03 ESR. And last but not least, for the proposed, the City of Tamarack, 21-01 ESR. They're on the public record and public hearing on each, to the extent that a member of the public has come to speak to any one of those items as proposed comp plan amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Is there a motion to approve our proposed item?
So moved. Goldberg. Udine, second.
Okay, the item has been moved by Councilmember Goldberg and seconded by Councilmember Udine. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait. This actually has to be a roll call vote. Are there any comments? Nothing in chat. There's no comment. Kathy, please call roll.
Burr?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Coldiron?
Yes.
Goldberg?
Yes.
Kaufman?
Yes.
Udine?
Yes.
Ziotti? Yes. Bailey?
Yes.
And for the record, Mr. Chair, there were no public comments coming through the website, through email or otherwise in connection with the proposed comp plan amendments. Now you have, if I may read further, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Well,
Thank
for
you.
for the record, let's just say that those items were adopted. We're now onto our adopted items. Sam, please go ahead with the those items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The adopted items are as follows: Broward County 21-04 ESR, Miami-Dade County 21-E01 ESR, the City of Hialeah 21-02 ESR, City of Hollywood 21-01 ESR, City of Homestead 21-02 ESR, the City of Lauderhill 21-01 ESR, the Town of Southwest Ranches 21-01 ESR, the City of Sunny Isles Beach 21-01 ESR, and last but not least, the City of Weston, number 21-01 ESR, all of which are adopted, having been legally transmitted to the council for review, and the public has a right of access during a public hearing on each. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Udine, second.
Thank you. Was that Goldberg moving the item?
Burr.
Okay. Commissioner Burr has moved the item and has been seconded by Commissioner Udine. Are there any public comments via email or in the chat?
Not at this time.
Okay. Seeing no comments, Kathy, please call roll.
Okay, take that down so we can see each other.
Coldiron?
Yes.
Burr?
Yes.
Goldberg?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Kaufman?
Yes.
Udine?
Yes.
Ziotti? Yes. Bailey?
Yes.
Chair Bailey?
Yes.
This is Isabel. Chair Bailey, I just want to recognize that Commissioner Senator Garcia has joined us. And also,
Yes.
it's difficult to tell from the screen if we have other elected officials online.
Yes, that I was going to do that next. So perfect. So before we do that, the item has been adopted. And so let's, Senator Garcia, welcome. Thank you. So if you're dialing in or you're calling in, you have the ability to add your name, and that will be helpful so we can know who's all here. Also, when you plan to speak, we can know when to unmute you. And so if you can right click and add your name, that would be very helpful. If you're having any issues, just put a comment in the chat and our staff will assist you. So on to the item C. So I think the conversation I learned about the item, I want to say roughly 2 weeks ago in my weekly meeting with the executive director, and I wanted to put the council in the best position as possible. So I asked as early as possible for a full detailed briefing to be presented. I know they were waiting on a lot of comments to come in from the different departments. And so I think you got your first document maybe Thursday, second Friday, and you got some over the weekend. I know it's been a very, very busy weekend for everybody, but hopefully everyone has had a chance to review everything that was sent. And also thanks to the proposal who also sent some additional information. And this is how we're gonna go. So we're gonna allow our senior planner to present first the 2 items and present the staff report. And next we're gonna have Mr. Jerry Bell from Miami-Dade County to present. And then we'll have the proposal to present. We're gonna hold off all questions until all the presentation because some questions might be asked and answered later. So we're gonna have the 3 back-to-back presenters. We will not limit those 3, but when we get to public comments, we will limit to 3 minutes for public comments because we want to make sure that everyone has enough time to present and we truly understand this because this is a very important decision for the council, and we want to make sure that we give them the opportunity to express their thoughts and on the item. Are you ready?
Chair Bailey, I'm sorry. Mr. Bell is here as a resource. He's not here to present. He's here to answer questions that the board may have. So we'll have Stina Miskus and then members of the applicant team. It would be very helpful also to know who's in the room because everybody has masks on, so I don't know. So it would be helpful if you could take a minute to introduce yourselves.
Sure.
Hi, Brian.
Okay. With partners and I'm with the applicant.
Graham Penn works for Mr. Burkow.
Graham is my partner. I'm Mr. Burkow, Jeff Burkow, and I'm representing the applicant.
Jose Heavy, I am the applicant, Align Real Estate Holdings.
John Kim with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. I'm the traffic engineer.
Ed Swaycon with EAS Engineering. I'm working on the environmental issues associated with the application.
Andrew Fasano, on the 9 on behalf of the co-applicant South Dade Industrial Partners.
Good morning, Jerry Bell, Assistant Director for Planning at RER. Glad to be here to answer any questions you might have.
Mayor Buddy Pender, Alamorada, Florida.
Ron Sutton, Mayor, Key Colony Beach.
If you're an elected official and would like to speak, please denote that because we want to make sure we have a list of all the electeds that are present. And because this is going to be, I'm sure there's a lot of comments. We want to wait until you're recognized by the chair before you speak. And so I'll call on each person individually, and that way we try to move as fast as possible. And so now we'll have Ms. Miskus, our senior planner, to present the staff report.
Good morning, council members. This morning we have an opportunity to comment as a council on Miami-Dade 21-02 ESR. It concerns an 800-acre proposed development that will require the expansion of the urban development boundary located approximately south of the Homestead extension to Florida's Turnpike between Southwest 107th Avenue and Southwest 122nd.
Sorry, is there any way to enlarge that we can highlight her video while she's presenting, staff?
The only way, Chair Bailey, is if you go at the top, instead of view everyone, click on who's talking, and then it'll enlarge her screen.
Perfect. Thank you for everyone.
We're seeing her big.
Okay, great. All right, so let's go. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and it's north of Southwest 268th Street, also known as Moody Drive. The intent of the proposed development is to build 9 million square feet of non-residential development, mostly industrial, but some commercial. Also, there will be a 150-room hotel proposed and 84 residential units in phase 3 of the development. It is within the coastal high hazard area, which is an area that would be vulnerable to a Category 1 storm, so an area that's vulnerable to flooding. It is bisected by the C-102 canal, which you can see in your maps that were provided as part of the staff report. And it would change the future land use designation from agricultural to special district. Our task as the Regional Planning Council is to identify any potential adverse effects to regional resources and facilities. So we did go through the strategic regional policy plan and identify the need for additional data and analysis regarding certain regional resources and facilities, particularly Biscayne Bay as it relates to the BB-SEER project that is being managed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and South Florida Water Management District. It is a restoration project that is part of the overall comprehensive Everglades restoration program. We don't have reassurance that surface waters would not be affected, particularly the C-102 canal, and we're unsure of the effects on Biscayne Bay. Also, water supply issues. The water supply plan for Miami-Dade County has yet to be adopted, so that would be an issue that would be recommended be addressed prior to adoption. In regards to regional transportation and emergency evacuation issues, FDOT did issue a letter saying that they did not at this time see adverse effects to the regional facilities. However, the projections for the project were a little low on the turnpike, so that may be something that the county would want to address prior to adoption to ensure the emergency evacuation, the route of the Florida Turnpike from Monroe County north would not be adversely affected, as it's a primary hurricane evacuation route. Also, wildlife habitat, the Miami-Dade County Department of Environmental Resources Management identified a need for a survey or assessment, and we want to know the effects on critical wildlife habitat that might exist. Our second task is to look at extra-jurisdictional impacts, and we did receive correspondence and resolutions from the cities of South Miami and Color Bay. South Miami passed a resolution, and their concerns were related to growth management. Color Bay, their concerns were related to Biscayne Bay, ecosystem health, and commerce. They were unsure of how this would affect their economic development goals. That was a mayor's letter. And then Isla Morada passed a resolution. Their concerns were related to Biscayne Bay, water supply, and the regional transportation facilities. And finally, Monroe County passed a resolution this past week urging Miami-Dade County to not pass or not transmit for adoption this amendment. Their concerns are related to Biscayne Bay, ecosystem health primarily, and the effects on regional transportation facilities. The amendment was transmitted for agency review, 9 yes, 3 no, 1 absent, and that's the conclusion of our comments.
Thank you, Ms. Miskis. Now we will have a presentation from the proposer. Isabel, could you please let us know who will be presenting on their behalf?
I believe it would be Mr. Burkow.
Yes, thank you.
Come over here. Oh, but you had a power.
Yes, I'm going to share the screen now with everyone.
You're recognized. Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. Is it okay if I remove my mask?
Yes, we encourage breaks.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Burkow. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Burkow, Riddell, Hernandez, Larkin, and Tappan. It's 200 South Biscayne Boulevard in Miami. I'm here today on behalf of the Miami-Dade County South Dade Logistics and Technology District application. I'll be calling it the district throughout my remarks. But we're here today to ask you to vote to transmit without any comment regarding either potential adverse impacts on regional resources or extra jurisdictional impacts on affected local governments Ed Swaycon, our environmental consultant, and John Kim, our transportation engineer, are here with me. And together we will explain why we're asking you for that transmittal. The district presents the first major private sector effort in decades to create jobs and reverse sprawl in South Dade. Here's what we have in South Dade today. We've got 18% of the population living below the federal poverty line in the county. But in South Dade, 24% live below that line. That's 33% more in South Dade. And there are deep pockets of poverty in the region to the south of the district and further to the southwest. Next slide, please. Unemployment in South Dade is 30% higher than the rest of Miami-Dade County. Next slide, please. 3/4 of the South Dade population leave the region every morning for their jobs and return in the evening. And by the way, we got this information and some of the other statistics in the 2020 Strategic Economic Development Plan for South Dade, and the council was a partner in that plan. Next slide, please. 28% of those commuters are driving for an hour or longer each way. That's twice the rate of the rest of the county. Next slide, please. At the same time, South Dade is estimated to grow by 40%, adding 110,000 people by 2040. That's twice the rate of countywide growth. Nearly half of the county's population lives in South Dade, but the jobs have not followed the residents. Next slide, please. Countywide, there are 2 residents for every job. But along the South Dade Busway, which is one of the most intensively developed areas in South Dade, there's only 1 job for every 4 residents. Next slide, please. South Dade today is the poster child for urban sprawl. South of 8th Street, you've got almost 90% of the land within the UDV that's developed for single-family homes. The county's failure to plan for job centers in South Dade in the last few decades has added to the region's problems, including high unemployment and wasteful commutes. Next slide, please. If you contrast North Dade, all of the top quality industrial centers are in North Dade. Next slide, please. Over 80% of the industrial land, whether it's vacant or developed in the county, is located in its north half. 100% of the premier distribution centers, like Beacon Lakes or Flagler Station, are located in the north half of the county. Next slide, please. This slide dramatically illustrates the imbalance of industrial land between the north and the south ends of the county. Next slide, please. The district itself is almost 800 acres of agriculturally designated land located south of the turnpike at exit 9. It's in the urban expansion area. It's adjacent to the urban development boundary. The comprehensive plan, the county's comprehensive plan, recognizes that urban expansion areas should be given priority for UDV expansion. The district's located at a full turnpike interchange. It's the only large-scale industrial location with direct access south of Southwest 8th Street. And you'll note the large areas designated yellow in this future land use map. Those are all single-family residential areas to the north, northeast, and southwest of the district. And even that commercial node, the red node to the north, is being developed mostly for residential purposes. Next slide, please. The project is going to be developed in 3 phases, with the district's main access roads being Southwest 268th Street and 112th Avenue. Both of those are existing 4-lane roads within 100-foot rights-of-way. The developers are providing all of the required infrastructure at a level equivalent to or exceeding county standards. Next slide, please. The location allows for modern logistics development with direct highway access, and there's not any impact. It's not in any of the Homestead Air Reserve Base flight zones or accident protection zones. Next slide, please. This slide describes very accurately the development plan for the district. It's also in your staff recommendation with a variety of different proposed uses, including logistics such as e-commerce, distribution and last mile, technology uses like data centers and avionics. Plus, there are some supportive commercial uses. Next slide, please. We believe the district will create the critical mass for South Dade by accommodating large-scale users and job generators who are going to begin to reverse the imbalance between residents and jobs in the region and start to compress the supply chain. Next slide, please. The district is going to begin to reverse commuting patterns and will create counterflow for its employees. Next slide, please. Property taxes at build-out are estimated to be approximately $13 million a year. Today, these 800 acres pay less than $45,000 a year annually. That's redundant. Sorry about that. Next slide, please. We are estimating that the district will add approximately 11,500 direct permanent jobs to the South Dade region. There will also be about 6,000 indirect and induced permanent jobs. These jobs are going to be filled by a wide variety of people with various skills and education levels and will pay considerably more than the retail, hospitality, and agricultural jobs that dominate South Dade today. The district is also going to create 13,000 construction jobs and will promote strategic regional policy plan goal 2 to increase employment opportunities and support the creation of jobs with better pay and benefits for the region's workforce. Now, I'd like to ask our environmental engineer, Ed Swaycon, to come to the podium and speak to you regarding the environmental concerns raised by staff. He'll be followed by John Kim, our transportation engineer, who will be speaking about transportation impacts, and then I will wrap up. Thank you.
Mr. Beckrow? Quick question. So there are two other presenters, correct? And then you're wrapping up?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ed Swaycon. I'm president of EAS Engineering. We're an environmental engineering firm that's been in the South Florida, Miami-Dade County area for 35 years. We specialize in working with clients both in the public and private sector through the regulatory process, and that involves all of the issues that I'm going to talk to you today about. One of the most important aspects of this project is that it's a project that does provide benefit to Biscayne Bay, not in the traditional sense that everybody thinks of, but it's a project outside the box that actually improves water quality, water delivery to Biscayne Bay. In our current situation, we have agricultural uses that are permitted to withdraw close to 13 million gallons a day for their agricultural needs. Based on water and sewer, the Water and Sewer Department's estimates, that quantity will be reduced to less than 270,000 gallons a day for the uses on the property. When you use the calculations that are provided by the South Florida Water Management District for estimating how much reduction in pollutant loading would be available or would occur after this project, which I believe are very conservative, there's a significant reduction in the most significant pollutants, phosphorus, nitrogen, that are now entering Biscayne Bay. Over 3.8 million gallons per day, or excuse me, over 1,000 kilograms enter Biscayne Bay, and after our project, there'll be 270 kilograms. And the reason that happens is you have to understand what's happening on that property today. Today, we have agricultural fields that are interlaced with agricultural ditches, and when it rains, the rain falls on those ag fields, is accumulated in those agricultural ditches, which were put there to remove the water so that the farm fields could continue to function without being flooded. Those agricultural ditches connect directly to the C-102 canal, which is a primary canal operated by the South Florida Water Management District via culverts. There are culverts there today. And then that water quality, that water with all of its pollutant loading from the agricultural fields is discharged into Biscayne Bay, untreated and with no quantity control. So when it rains, you get a big pulse. The way the system is set up is that when the water levels in the canal reach a certain level, the floodgates open and all that water goes out. Under our proposed development, 100% of all of the stormwater from the 100-year 3-day storm event, that's 16 inches of water, 16 inches of rainfall that would fall on the site for that period.
Sorry, 1 second. We have some feedback noise. Can we make sure everyone's muted, staff? Okay, perfect. You can go ahead. Sure.
So after our proposed development, we're going to be capturing 100% of all of the rainfall from the 100-year 3-day rainfall event and retaining it on site and allowing it to exfiltrate into the ground after appropriate water quality treatment. So what that does is it mitigates the pulse discharges that are now going to Biscayne Bay, and it significantly improves the water quality that's being presented or proposed and discharged into Biscayne Bay. You've heard about SURF. We can go to the next slide. You've heard about SURF, and I think it's important to note that what you see on the screen here are the original SURF boundaries from what's called the Yellow Book in 1999. That was the all-encompassing review of what might we need to do to protect Biscayne Bay and Everglades and the regions. Our property is shown in yellow. We were not in the original Yellow Book footprint. We can go to the next slide. What's happening today with the BB Sear project is a number of the original Yellow Book projects that were contemplated never were able to be built, either for financial reasons, for technical reasons, for a whole host of reasons. And the community that wants to protect Biscayne Bay, including us, have gotten together and say, hey, let's take all these projects that are still out there and let's put them all in one basket and let's see if there's a way we can consolidate and improve and move and get the best bang for the project, best bang for Biscayne Bay. So what's happening now is a brainstorming effort, essentially. People are looking at all different alternatives and they're drawing circles on maps. And they drew a circle over our piece of property. Our property that's owned by private individuals. And they said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could do something on this piece of property to get rid of one of the most detrimental components that's harming Biscayne Bay, and that's the agricultural drawdown. And if you don't know what that is, that's a forced drawdown of the water at the end of the highest, when the water levels are the highest, at the beginning of the growing season, so that farmers can get their crops in the ground. Well, ideally, what you would want to do is store that water. You would want to retain it so that you could get it out to Biscayne Bay at the appropriate, when we don't have enough rainfall, but that's not what's happening. So the components or the aspects of this Biscayne BB Sear project are looking at ways to eliminate the ag drawdown. And they came up with two alternatives. One is they said, let's fill all the agricultural properties that are affected by this ag drawdown to an elevation where they no longer need the ag drawdown. Well, that's fraught with all kinds of issues. The soils that are available for distribution and suitable for plant growth, as we all know now, for the most part, have a lot of contaminants in them, particularly arsenic. Trying to find appropriate soils to spread over those areas is just not going to happen. The other alternative that was discussed in BB Sear was, let's put in wells and dewater those sites put it in an ASR, aquifer storage and recovery location, and then pump it back out. But even they now acknowledge that that would require significant water quality treatment, both going in and coming out, in order to make that water even semi-beneficial for what's going on. Our project, on the other hand, occupies a footprint within the area that is subject to the ag drawdown. We don't eliminate it. Our project's not going to eliminate it. It's still going to have to occur for the other farmers that are in the area. But we take one piece of the puzzle out. We reduce the amount of water. They can continue to do and explore all the other things that they want in BBC. We can go to the next slide. Wetlands, there are no identified wetland basins or boundaries that affect our property. Might there be wetlands within our property? Yes, there have been some identified in certain portions. Are they non-permittable? No, we've been doing this for 35 years. What minor wetlands may exist on this property are things that will be addressed during the regular permitting process. Next slide, please. Endangered species. We have 2 endangered species that cover the area, and they are the Florida snail kite and the Florida bonneted bat. And those consultation areas literally extend over all of Miami-Dade County. So every project in Miami-Dade County that's working in sort of virgin, unprotected land has to deal with these 2 species. We've had people on the property to look. Neither one of those species are a particular concern to us. The bat is not going to exist on this property. There's no roosting. There's no foraging areas of interest in these areas. And the kite is ubiquitous. It's not going to be affected one way or the other by this project.
Mr. Slunkin?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Slunkin, how much longer in your presentation, just for planning purposes? I'm not limiting you at the moment, but for planning purposes, you know roughly how much longer will you be going?
I have one more issue to deal with. It's not even on a slide, and that's coastal high hazard. Coastal high hazard is something that was identified as a concern for the Regional Planning Council as well as others. You have to understand how the designation occurs. The coastal high hazard area is a result of running a model, determining what the water elevations from a Category 1 hurricane would be, and taking that elevation and subtracting the land elevation, the existing land elevation. If the land is low, then you're in that, and you have some standing water on your site, then you're in that area. Our project is going to fill the property and take it out of the coastal high hazard area, and we're not residential, which is the area of concern. I'll be glad to answer any questions later. And I don't know if it went long or short, I just ran.
No, it's fine. Okay, you have one more presenter?
Yes, sir. John Kim from Langen is our transportation engineer.
I'll be much quicker, I promise. My name is John Kim. I work with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. I'm a registered Florida PE. I focus on transportation. And I'll be very brief. So we prepared a traffic impact analysis for the Comprehensive Development Master Plan Amendment in accordance with the county guidelines, which both the state and the county use a 5% significance level, meaning 5% of my wherever my traffic hits the road and is 5% of that road's capacity, I have to analyze it. We found that, and we analyzed actually 30 roadway segments for this analysis. And I'm gonna, I guess, focus on the DOT common road to the turnpike. The Florida Turnpike, we analyzed 2 segments of it, both north and south of the interchange on 112th Avenue. So the segment north, which is basically north of the interchange on 112, the Florida Turnpike, excuse me, for 2040, for both analyses, we were found to be significantly impact the north segment of the turnpike, but we were not significant analyzing the south segment. And this is north and south relative to the turnpike interchange. But in the case of the north portion of the turnpike that we analyzed, for 2045, it's projected to operate at level service C, which is the adopted level of service for that road. For the southern portion, we were not significantly impacting it. So we don't have to mitigate our impacts to that roadway, but I think it was projected to operate at level service speed. But in any event, all the roads that we impact significantly through this analysis, we're either mitigating through the county, or in the case of the turnpike, don't have any impacts that require mitigation. I'm going to leave it at that for the sake of time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Mr. Chair, I'm going to wrap up and thank you for the time that you've given us. Council members, I want to remind you of your scope of review, which is limited to any impacts on regional resources and facilities identified in the strategic regional policy plan, and any extra jurisdictional impacts that would be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan of affected local governments. I want to also point out that the agency comments from the Water Management District, DEO, FDOT, Ag, etc., are not relevant to your review unless they relate specifically to the regional facilities in your plan. The resolutions from the 4 local governments that you've received, it's actually 3 resos in a letter, don't identify and specify any jurisdictional impacts that are inconsistent with their comprehensive plans, nor do they explain with any specificity how their jurisdictions would be affected. It's hard to see how they would be affected. The closest is Cutler Bay at 2.5 miles, and there we just have a letter from the mayor and not a resolution. Monroe County's 15 miles away, South Miami 12 miles away, and Isla Morada 38 miles away. And I think Mr. Swaycon and Mr. Kim have shown that there are no adverse impacts on Biscayne Bay, the regional water supply, wildlife habitat, or regional transportation facilities. So we're asking you to vote that the proposed amendment does not have any adverse impacts on regional resources or facilities identified in the strategic regional policy plan, and that there are no extra jurisdictional impacts affecting any local government that is inconsistent with their comprehensive plans. Thank you very much for your time. We're here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, and this is how we'll go now. And so we will now open it up to questions from council members of any of our presenters, including our senior planner, Ms. Miskett. After we do questions and answers, once there's a motion to move the item in any direction, we will allow public comments. We'll start off our public comments with elected officials, and the reason why I would like for them to go first, because they, speaking from their official capacity, they generally represent more people than the commenters, other commenters. And so they will be allowed to go first, and then we'll go to everyone else who would like to speak. We're going to limit that to 3 minutes. And so before we begin with questions, Ms. Miskett, our senior planner, any comments before we go to questions and answers from the council members?
I don't have any additional comments other than there were comments provided by the South Florida Water Management District that really is the expert in the Biscayne Bay matters that was included in the package. I'll defer to Water Management District on those issues.
Okay, and so for everyone who's watching on our website, you have our report that staff prepared. You have the presenters report, and now we're on for questions from council members. We're going to recognize Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question. How are these normally handled in the past? This is the first time I'm here, and I appreciate the presentations. Are they normally just passed out to the county commissions and let them deal with it, since I sit on that body as well? Just curious as anyone can fill me in on that procedure.
Perhaps I can respond, Mr. Chair. Senator, Commissioner, good morning. Thank you for your questions. You have an independent role as a member of the Regional Planning Council. Whatever the Miami-Dade Commission has done or may do in the near future is a Miami-Dade decision, but you are here essentially as what's called a free dealer. You get to decide as a Regional Planning Council member what your obligations are and responsibilities. 2 things. You've heard the word Strategic Regional Policy Plan, SRPP. It exists. It's a legal document that actually controls the rules and relationships between the Regional Council and land use comprehensive. Statutes modified last 5 years.
Mr. Gordon, 1 second.
Yes.
Can we make sure everyone's muted, please, because we're getting feedback. And this, we want to make sure we hear Mr. Gordon because he's sending out like what's our responsibility here, which is most important. So, okay,
and the SRPP is a legal document that binds not just the council members, but binds those affected by development in the region specifically, which must be consistent with the state plan, and the county plan must be consistent with the regional plan. There's a level of consistency that runs from the state to the regional council to the county. The second part of which is, and it's been cited to by both the staff through Ms. Miskus and also by Mr. Burkow, there's a statute that governs what you are doing here today. It's chapter 163, which is a pretty long statute, but there's one specific section to which we need to address ourselves, and that's 163-3184. And that's been cited to in the literature and the backup provided to you by staff. And to the extent that there's language I'd like to read into the record because it's right from the statute versus an analysis of the statute, comments to the local government being Miami-Dade County, from a regional planning council, county or municipality shall be limited as follows. And here in subsection 3A says the following: the regional planning council review and comments shall be limited to adverse effects on regional resources or facilities identified in a strategic regional policy plan and extra jurisdictional impacts that would be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan of any affected local government within the region. A regional planning council may not review and comment on a proposed comprehensive plan amendment prepared by such council unless the plan amendment has been changed by the local government subsequent to the preparation of the plan amendment by the regional planning council. So rightfully so, you are legally able to provide your comments, your observations, your policymakers, you know that. You're also county commissioners or governor's appointees. You come with no direct portfolio from your county commission. You are able to independently vote, or if you feel compelled to vote that way in the context of your county commission or city commission, as the case may be. So from a legal perspective, the SRP is the overarching document that controls the review of comprehensive plans. The statute gives you some specific statutory authority on which to act. And today, if you do not comment and if you do not take a motion of some kind, you're a stop along the railroad station, so to speak. And to the extent that you don't comment, you kind of lose that bite of the apple. You're not here for that purpose. You're all active advocates on behalf of the regional council's role and relationship. And for that purpose, there'll be a request to take some level of action at the end of the meeting to continue your trip on the railroad train that's going to get this item eventually to the state of Florida through DEO as well as through Miami-Dade County. Senator, I hope that answers some of your general questions about process and procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. It does. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
And if I may, historically, in the last couple of years, has a process when we've had these type of issues as it relates to Dade County, what has this board historically done? Have they just not taken a position, or have they moved it forward? Have they moved to deny? Have they moved to approve? What has historically happened? Just for my.
I can defer to our executive director who can give you some historical perspective through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Gordon, you're not to provide a historical perspective.
I mean, my best answer is that you had earlier in the agenda proposed amendments and you had adopted amendments, and the council provides a fundamental due process, which is that people who are affected by these comp plan amendments have the absolute unequivocal right to be heard, whether it be physically in the room, and there are folks here. You can dial in because we're living in a pandemic environment, unfortunately. But you should also know that there's a statutory amendment for those who may not know that in the room. Chapter 120 was amended in 2020 to specifically allow for virtual meetings of regional planning councils when you have a third of the membership present. So all action being taken today is not just validated through the statute, but it's also legally doable. So in each instance, every application is considered differently. This happens to be, perhaps I would use the word more significant because it's raised issues and there are a lot of extra regional comments being raised by other governmental agencies. And I defer to our director to give you some more insight to that.
So Senator Garcia, historically,
One second, Isabel. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No problem. If you're in the room, if you wish to speak, please let Isabel know. She's reaching out to me, and I just want to make sure that I have everyone who's in queue and ready to speak. Isabel, before when you're answering this question, can you also speak to, because the last time I remember we did something similar, it was a mall coming to South Florida. And so if you have history on that also, if you can speak to that also. Thank you.
Yes, okay, so historically, as Sam mentioned, there is a strategic regional policy plan that has always guided the reviews of the council. It has many goals and objectives and policies. Statutory changes have reduced the areas we are allowed to comment on. Historically, we would look at proposed amendments along all the goals of the SRPP. Now we have to look at regional resources and extra jurisdictional impacts inconsistent with the local government comprehensive plan of the local government. We would review a comp plan amendment and we provide a staff recommendation to the board. Our recommendations typically is consistency or inconsistency with the strategic regional policy plan. In the past, I guess the most recent big amendments many amendments that we get really are consistent. They only are local government influenced amendments. They don't rise to the level of anything. So we just say, put it on the consent agenda, and that's what we did this morning, and off they go. So sometimes amendments are more complex and they touch on different issues. And so there have been cases where staff, what we do is we do our best to collect the information that's needed to review along the lines that we're authorized to review and provide the board with the information that we can find. And it is not unusual for the board then to say, thank you very much, staff. We have reviewed your recommendation, but as policymakers, we think we want to say something different. That happened with American Dream Miami project, you will recall. And you will also recall that when we were having the conversation at the same time about the proposed expansion of 836, that there were some questions about what it would do in the wetlands area, that the council recommendation was to find it inconsistent with the regional policy plan. We don't find those we don't make those findings casually. It's a very important thing. But at the proposed stage, what we're saying to the local government is, look, this might be a great project, but we have concerns about these potential impacts to regional resources, and we'd like you to keep working on it. So the commenting agency comments are addressed, so that I don't know, I can provide you a recommendation and you can change it. I think there's a lot of comments that have been raised, and I think that, again, it might be a very good project. Certainly jobs are needed, but is it ready for prime time right now? I don't know. No, we just provide you information we have.
Thank you for that. And so I just want to make sure that my role is to protect all the council members, to make sure that you understand the work before you. But so before we go into questions again, I want to make sure, is there anyone don't need more clarity about our direction today, what we can and can't not do, and why we're here? I just want to make sure that we're all on the.
I have a question.
Sure. Who's speaking? Okay, you recognize Commissioner Fur.
Because there's so many, from staff's point of view, they're saying we need a lot more information on this. Is what I'm seeing on this. That there's a lot of questions that we want to hear from, particularly Miami-Dade staff.
Water Management District.
From Water Management District. All of those. It's very hard for us to there's just a lot of unanswered questions here. And I think we're being asked to transmit something that I don't think we have anywhere near enough information on. I mean, not to mention, we just got this. This is a lot. And this is an important, this is a big decision. I think it's a big decision for Miami-Dade. And it has a lot of ramifications. There's pluses and minuses here. There's no two ways about it. I mean, if you can reduce some of the pollution going in Biscayne Bay, that's a plus. You could do advanced water treatment area, that's a plus. You're also eliminating. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we move it expedient as possible. And so you're not allowed to have comments on your pros and cons, but what I want to go here while we have a presenter, we can try to get any questions that we have, and then we can talk as a council about like what we like, how we don't.
Okay.
And
Let me just end it with this. My question is there a way of postponing this or deferring this to, we can't. I'm
May I
saying no.
respond?
Great.
Mr. Chair, if I
Great
can.
question.
There's a statutory. May I respond?
Could we, 1 second, Sam? So let's make sure everyone's recognized through the chair. So we can just, because we want to make sure that everyone can hear every person that's speaking. And 2, we just want to make sure that it goes as orderly as possible. So if you would like to speak, definitely reach out. If you're in a room, let Isabel know, and I can see the people on the screen. And so I had your same concerns, Commissioner Furr. I met 2 weeks ago with our executive director. I said, hey, let's make sure we get everything as soon as possible. I would like for every council member to have a full briefing at least a week or so out so they can really digest the material. And so we met again on I think Wednesday or Thursday, and they said they were waiting on comments and they'll send everything out they have. And over the weekend, you got a dump of a lot of information.
Friday.
I was in Alabama for a wedding, and so it was really tough for me to get through everything. And so I do understand your position. Based on that question I asked Sam, could we postpone this and do it at a later time so we can make sure the council members really had time to vet this? Based on my understanding, we do not, because we only, once we get the item, we have, I think, 30 days to answer. Is that correct, Sam?
Mr. Chair, it is under the statute that I cited to you before. There is a statutory obligation, timely obligation, whether you comment or not, there is provided for in the statute.
Definitely. And when we received the proposal, Isabel?
Oh, we actually, it was transmitted at the very end of September, I think around September 22nd, making this the first opportunity. We have 30 days to review on our expedited review process, but we did not actually receive the package here until well into October. And the agency comments came in Friday. So,
great.
Yeah.
And so thank you. And so that's where we are. And so I completely agree with you, Commissioner Furr. I did not want to have this meeting. I was hoping that we could get additional information earlier, but we were not afforded that opportunity. And so if we do not comment now, we lose our ability to comment going forward. And so it's a tough position. And so what we'll do, we'll ask questions of all the presenters. And if we feel comfortable doing something, there will be a motion from somebody on the council. Senator Garcia, you recognize you have a question, comment?
Well, then as a council member, we got this now, so we're having to make a decision on the whim. Is there any way obviously we have this 30-day expedited process that we have. Is there any way that we can have a special meeting in a week or 2? Is that even a remote possibility so the council members can digest this and look at it?
Senator Garcia, I asked that question and I was told no initially, but let's check again. Isabel, Sam, what is the final date that we actually have to submit, or what's the final date?
Today.
I think that based on the analysis today could be the day, so to speak. The problem is that the statutory timeframes are exactly that. They're in state law. So that even if the parties are willing and able and are agreeable and are affable about making a decision, you can't shake hands and extend the statutory timeline that you don't get to control by law. The consequence of which is that it's in the law that has to be followed. However you treat this application today, and I'm sure you'll talk about options and opportunities as you proceed this morning, this is your stop along the road among other agencies of government. Again, the fact is that regional planning councils are expressly provided for in the statute as a place where the applicant must go with their pending application.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gore. So to answer you before we go back to you, so just so we're clear, this is the only day, and it's very, very unfortunate we got all this information over the weekend. Like I said, I was attending my sister's wedding when I was able to read, and so I completely understand your concerns. And so what we'll do, we'll ask questions, and if we feel that we're in a position to say something, we will speak. But if not, we won't. So Senator Garcia, you recognize, and then Commissioner, you're next.
Mr. Chairman, I promise it'll be the last question on process. You know how I am on when it comes to processes about information being transmitted and so forth. So we got this information on the weekend?
Friday.
Friday? Okay, but if we have 30 days, if we have 30 days.
One second. That's not completely correct. So we got the first information September 22nd. I think we got additional information omitting 2 department reports last week, I want to say. What day did you? Sure.
Thursday we sent the preliminary staff report and indicated that we were waiting for the staff. So really what's new is the staff analysis and the agency comments. A good bit of the information in the package, including the analysis that came from Miami-Dade County, was part of the original package considered by the Miami-Dade County Commission on September 9th. So what you have that's relevant to here is the Miami-Dade County Commission at their meeting. I watched the meeting. There was a lot of conversation, pro, con, neutral, and they said, let's go ahead and transmit this now. And so we can get agency comments, and then we will have more information to work with. And so that's the process that was kicked off through the transmittal process. And we've done our best as other commenting agencies to provide our agency comment on what we see as potential impacts to state and regional resources and facilities. And in fact, the Amendment 1 recommendation says transmit this agenda item as comments to Miami-Dade County and the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, with a note that additional information is needed to fully assess potential impacts to state and or regional resources or facilities. So for our council, this is actually a pretty conservative recommendation. So
I think this is a question that Senator Garcia is trying to get to. So our senior planner, is it safe to assume or know that we couldn't start the process without those department comments to answer questions 1 and 2, or those were completely needed before you were able to do your business?
Through the chair.
The report.
Go ahead.
Would you like me to?
Yes.
The report was drafted based on comparing the strategic regional policy plan to the package that was provided and the concerns that were brought up by departments like Department of Environmental Resources Management. What we did want to wait for is reaffirmation from major organizations like South Florida Water Management District on these very important issues, because they are the manager of the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Program and the Biscayne Bay Ecosystem Restoration Program, to reaffirm the concerns on the regional resources and facilities. So even though we had a draft report based on the package, we do depend on the experts like South Florida Water Management District and Florida Department of Transportation for reaffirmation and clarification on potential adverse effects.
Thank you. Councilmember Leonard, you're recognized for a question or comment.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, it's not in, it has not been transmitted in our documents, but I'd like for the record if we could announce what the vote was by the Board of County Commissioners. It was a 9-3-1 vote. I could probably guess pretty well who's the one, but I'd like to know which commissioners voted for and against this to transmit.
Okay, 1 second for that question, because that's a very important question, but let's ask what, so that's the question for our presenter. So Ms. Memphis, can you answer that question, the vote count for the, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
And could you speak to the vote, like what was the actual?
Yeah, if you just give me a moment, I closed the document in question, so I'll pull that up again.
No, are there any questions of our planner or the presenters from council members? Sure. Commissioner Kaufman, you're recognized.
Yes. So from a Monroe County perspective, certainly water quality issues are paramount. And one of the presenters stated that there would be, with regard to in the context of stormwater, that there would be, quote, appropriate water quality treatment. I heard Commissioner Furr mention advanced wastewater treatment, which we of course have in Monroe County, but the mainland does not. Can I have more information about advanced wastewater treatment? Is that in fact in the proposal? And if so, who's paying for it, and some details, please?
Okay, so the presenter, you are recognized to answer Commissioner Kaufman's question, and Mayor Ziotti, you're up next for your question once this is.
I think we're confusing two particular topics. The matter of stormwater, the stormwater is being captured and retained on site and will be processed on site through traditional stormwater management means. The facility itself will be connected to sanitary sewer. Advanced wastewater treatment usually comes into the discussion when you're talking about reuse water as part of SERP, where you might take wastewater from the South Dade wastewater treatment plant, treat it to a much higher standard, and then reintroduce that to the environment. That is a concept that's being discussed as part of BB-SEER. It is not part of our proposal. We would have no input or ability to deal with advanced wastewater treatment.
Thank you. Councilmember Kaufman, is there a follow-up?
No, thank you for the clarification. I think that's very important because for us in Monroe County, the goal should be advanced wastewater treatment. And I know that that's not maybe the reality for you all on the mainland, but for us, it is vitally important. And to make a suggestion that the water quality of Miami does not impact us in Monroe County is just not correct. And you can ask our fishing guides, you can ask those, especially in the Upper Keys. We're very concerned about this. Thank you.
So, thank you. We're gonna go. Okay, 1 second. And so remember, this is a question period. There will be council comments coming up shortly, when we move the item or we don't or whatever we do. And so this is for informational purposes. So we'll make sure this is specifically questions. Ms. Miskis, do you recognize to answer the question regarding the vote? What was it about? And yes. What was it? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, the vote from Miami-Dade County Commission was a vote to transmit for agency comment. The particular votes are, the yeses were Jose Pepe Diaz, Commissioner Diaz, Commissioner Gilbert, Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Hayman, Commissioner McGee, Commissioner Soto, Commissioner Martinez, Commissioner Monestein, and Commissioner Sosa. The nays were Commissioner Eileen Higgins, Commissioner Raquel Regalado, and Commissioner Danielle Cohen-Higgins. One absent, Keon Hardeman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Ziotti, you're recognized for a question.
Yes. So this will be obviously primarily industrial use, and you are stating that it will bring in jobs because people tend to commute away and it's roughly an hour commute. But with those industrial jobs, you state that they're higher paying jobs. Is it because they require higher education? And has that kind of been taken into consideration? Because people may be commuting because they're working at a hospital or they're working hospitality on the east side of town, and hence the commute.
One of the things I need
to answer the question
through the chair. One of the things I didn't mention, just because of the time limitations, is that we have prohibited 78 different types of industrial uses through a proffered covenant that would otherwise be prohibited in the industrial district. We are focusing on logistics and technology uses. We're not requiring higher levels of education, but we know there will be varying levels of education and different skill types that will be employed through this district. It is primarily logistics and
logistics, distribution, and technology uses. And we believe from our consultants that these jobs will be offering higher wages than are offered elsewhere in South Dade today.
And you chose industrial because, I mean, based on what I'm looking at the maps, it's not near a port, it's not near an airport. What is?
Let me explain that. It's the proposed designation of this district will be a special district under the county's plan called South Dade Logistics and Technology District. It won't be called industrial. But this will be similar to some of the upscale logistics and distribution parks in the county, like Beacon Lakes and Flagler Station. The reason that we chose this location is that this has 3 of the characteristics that are required for logistics and distribution uses. Number 1, and most important, direct expressway access. Being on the turnpike provides significant advantages for this area, number 1. Number 2 is it's a large site. It is available, and number 3, it is regularly shaped so that we get the maximum efficiency out of the land. Being on an expressway is significant. It doesn't have to be directly next to a port. We've got a very successful project out in West Dade called Beacon Lakes that is several miles from the airport and the seaport, but very successful in having the direct expressway access.
But again, it's all surrounded by residential.
This is not surrounded by residential. This has agriculture to the east, right, and to the south. To the north, we have the turnpike as a barrier to the residential on the other side. On the west side, for the north half of the property, we've got the turnpike and we've got the canal as a barrier. And then there's a small section that is adjacent to residential along 268th Street, but we're going to propose buffers in that area.
Mayor Gigliotti, that answered your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mayor Kodar. You're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Chair Bailey. My question is based on the comments made about this being in a coastal high hazard area. And I'm very concerned about that and want to know, when you said you were going to fill that area, has there been a stormwater master plan study conducted to show what the impacts of that drainage will do?
You're recognized, Mr. Berkero. Thank you.
I'll let Mr. Swaycon handle that one. Be on my pay grade.
Yeah, Mayor, there is a comprehensive stormwater master plan that has looked at all aspects of resiliency and the future in terms of potential flooding on the site. All of the design criteria that are being used on the project are using criteria that look at sea level rise 50 years into the future, so that we are incorporating those water levels in our design standards for stormwater, how much water can be exfiltrated. With respect to coastal high hazard, the mitigation measure for removing yourself from the coastal high hazard is the elevation of the property. I hope that answers your question.
Mayor Kodar, did that answer your question?
In a roundabout way, yes, thank you.
Okay, did you have an additional question?
Can I add one thing to that, please? That response.
Okay, all right, we have a second.
Jerry Bell, Miami-Dade County. Jerry Bell, Miami-Dade County.
Yeah, take one
Please. Jerry Bell.
One second. Guys in the room, wait. if you prefer to speak, please just send a text or in the chat so we can just keep it orderly. We can know who's speaking. Everything can be on the record. So if you would like to speak, please just let Alicia in the room or Isabel know. There was a question in the chat from a council member when we get a chance to speak. So let me just let you know where we are now. So we're asking questions of the presenter, and this is for the council member. Once they make a motion to do something, and then we will open up for public comment before they vote. And so that's when the public comment come in if there's a motion. And so we have Mr. David Webb. Mr. David Webb, if you can introduce yourself.
Chair. Chair.
No. Yes.
Point of order real quick. I think Mr. Bell was trying to have an answer or a response from the county themselves with regard to stormwater issues.
Correct.
And I think it's important that that be on the record.
Yes, okay, no problem. I have no problem with the county speaking. I just want to make sure that we're orderly. Everyone know who you are, and it's something on the record. And so that's why we're going to this format. So, but definitely speak out. Sure.
Jerry Bell, Assistant Director for Planning with Miami-Dade County. I just wanted to add that Durham is one of the county agencies that has been reviewing the application. We have had a lot of discussions with the applicants regarding the stormwater drainage master plan. The fact of the matter is that this is an area that has been outside of the UDB, so it's been modeled previously only for agriculture. So now we really need to have this stormwater drainage master plan to fully analyze it. Durham has requested that. We have been in discussions with the applicants. We have not received the level of the master plan that we have been requesting to this point. We will continue to work with them to get the needed information, but at this point we have requested it, and that was one of the reasons for our recommendation at the time, which is basically looking for that additional information that we always need.
Did the Miami-Dade Commission ask for?
1 second, please. Hey, guys in the room, please. 1 second. So we're not going to be back and forth yet. We're going to make sure everyone's recognized so that this can be an orderly meeting. So, Mr. Bell, if you can go back and you were speaking kind of fast and just completely missed that. So if you can go back and if you have a question for Mr. Bell in the room, you will be recognized. So Mr. Bell, if you can just state that one time a little slower, please. Thank you.
Correct. Yes, sorry about that. Yes, what I was saying was that one of the issues that we had with the application, the information submitted, was the fact this is an area that's being brought into the UDB that had only been previously modeled as agriculture. So we needed to have a stormwater drainage master plan. So our representatives from Durham have been working with the applicants to request a plan with the type of information that they felt was needed. We understand that something was submitted last week. It's still being reviewed. So that's still an active process. But I think in order to fully answer the question of the drainage, we have requested that stormwater drainage master plan. We continue to work with the applicants on that. So I just wanted to make that point regarding the drainage issues and regarding some of the statements that were made during the presentation regarding the impacts. We really need to have a full picture, and that's one of the things we asked for. I believe I did hear a question about the commission voted to transmit for agency review. We did raise a number of issues that we felt we needed additional information on, and I think the transmittal was really gave an opportunity to hear comments from the various agencies. So that was that vote.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I think that was Commissioner Furr that had a question. And the reason why I stopped you, because there's a lot of people there actually zooming in and they can't really see what's happening in the room. So I just want to make sure for the record and everyone who's attending this meeting that they can kind of notice everything that's going on. So Commissioner Furr, you're recognized for your question of Mr. Bell.
I had asked, and Mr. Bell actually just answered it, what the Dade County Commission had asked of them. And he responded.
Thank you, Commissioner Furr.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Burkow. If I can just add one point regarding the stormwater master plan. It was submitted last week. It's a master stormwater management plan. I believe our civil engineer is on the line to explain exactly what was submitted, if you would like to hear that.
If that would be a question for Commissioner Furr. He had the question. So Commissioner Furr, would you like for that to be?
Actually, at some point, what I want to do is hear the review of that plan through their agency. I don't really need to hear just your plan. I need to hear the review.
So far, if it's transmitted, it has not been reviewed. Correct. Is that
It's not been reviewed.
correct? So,
I need to hear the review, not the plan itself.
okay. So we have Mr. David Webb, who wishing to speak. Isabel, who's Mr. David Webb? Sorry, just want to make sure.
I'll defer to Alicia.
He's the elected official, the councilman with Isla Mirada.
Okay, 1 second. He will be allowed to speak when we're in public comments. So now we're just so the council members are getting all their questions answered, so they can possibly move an item or not move it. And so once there's a motion, and it's been properly seconded, then you open up public comments before you vote. And so we're not on the public comment portion yet. We're just getting questions answered for the council members, so they can be in a position so they can possibly do something or not. So are there any questions of our council members?
Chair Barely, Councilmember Coldiron does have another question, and then Councilmember Goldberg as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Coldiron, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Bailey. So to clarify, maybe with our attorney there in the room, what options of motions do we have today in front of us?
Mr. Gordon, could you please speak to all the motions that we have available to us?
Sure. Doing nothing is not a legal option for your attorney. To the extent that you would do nothing, that means you're bypassed by the state and by your colleague local governments if you choose not to comment. Your staff has performed a statutory function, not only under Chapter 163, but also under your own SRPP. So staff has actually spent the time, invested their efforts and their research skills to evaluate and measure this application. And in the backup today is their analysis. So you have number one is doing nothing is not an option. Another option is you do have the analysis and you have the analysis prepared by staff. Typically what the council has done is you've either found the plans to be inconsistent or consistent with the SRPP. That's what your statutory role is. I have some level of history with this organization, and it's not uncommon in somewhat.
1 second. Sam, 1 second. Please, in the room, please do not speak while Sam is speaking. There are people that are not in the room. They can't hear all the comments. So I'm sorry if I'm sounding frustrated. I just want to make sure everyone can hear. And so go ahead, Sam.
Thank you. Again, to the extent that the council has in the past, under the statutory scheme, you have made motions and accepted that decision, finding plans to be consistent with the SRP. There's also been actions taken by the council in the past to find them inconsistent, and you cite to the reasons. The third option, which is one which is sort of carried in the backup from staff, is you can theoretically transmit the analysis prepared by staff without a specific comment of consistency or inconsistency. That's an option. You're the policymakers. You're the ones that get to decide how you look at your own SRPP and whether or not the staff, in its wisdom, has analyzed all the impacts and has followed the statutory scheme and would seek to be heard in the future to the extent that the item gets passed forward. So again, four basic options, and I'll be very blunt about it. The do nothing option doesn't work well for your lawyer because then you lose your seat at the table, not just now, but down the road as well. The statute not only contemplates your involvement, but it actually requires it, in my opinion. Second view is that you could find the item to be consistent with the SRPP if you believe, based upon the testimony and evidence you've received so far, in the backup that it would be consistent. The other option, number three, would be essentially to find it inconsistent. If there were some bases upon which staff has given you point-by-point analysis where the SRPP is not complied with, and to that extent, the council, in passing back its comments, would suggest it's inconsistent. And the fourth option, I believe, given the history of the Regional Planning Council, it's kind of a mixed bag between consistent and inconsistent, which is that essentially staff has done a very diligent, good faith analysis of this applicant's submission. To that extent, staff has analyzed it, the comments are provided for, but it would be passed on without specific comments of consistency or inconsistency. That is also a policy-driven potential option that you have, bearing in mind the following. The package before you includes not just the staff's analysis. Every agency review every resolution, every letter, everything that came from other agencies is in this backup. And when you send up your comments, if at all, which I trust that you'll do in some form or fashion, that whole package gets transmitted to the Miami-Dade folks. They're not going to just see the letter saying, this, that, or the other. They're going to see whatever you see, they're going to see as well. So those, I believe, Mayor Coldiron, would be the 4 legal options I would consider, although I think that the first option is really less than full in the context of your advocacy role on behalf of your communities, as well as your role as a regional planning council member.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry, Chair Bailey. Do I still have the floor?
Yes, you do. Go ahead. Sure.
Sorry about that. It's so hard to do these Zoom meetings, and I appreciate the challenges you're having, Chair Bailey, conducting this meeting from afar. And I'm too afar today, or I would have appreciated being in the room today for something as important as this. My question now is, are we ready to take a motion? Because if so, I would like to make one.
Not yet. Sorry, we have a few more questions. So I just want to make sure everyone in the room have the ability to have their questions answered. And so before they vote and we do a motion, they kind of know. So Councilmember Goldberg had a question. And so if there's any, after that, we can move to motion. And also Commissioner Furr has a question next. So Councilmember Goldberg.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple, if that's okay. First one, I just want to go back to the flooding question one more time here. And you clearly know better than I would assume just about everybody. There's comments made by the public, it looks like, in the surrounding areas of concern by raising this, it's going to cause a tremendous amount of drain and runoff into their communities. However, then I saw further in this that somebody had stated that when we had our last hurricane, they were flooding as well there. Is that a problem with the way that those communities were constructed and at what level, what grade they were built to then, is this going to exacerbate it, or is it, where does it stand?
Okay, so the communities that were there were built at the standards that were in place at the time. The analyses that have been conducted suggest that in certain storm events, those communities will in fact flood with or without our project. I mean, even without our project. In the design considerations for our project, we've recognized that in certain circumstances, there may be flow from adjacent residential developments that flow onto our property in certain storm events. Our plan is to then capture that and route it or accommodate it within our site. Most likely it's routed around. Right now, if that stormwater is coming from an adjacent residential area in a storm and is ending up in the C102 and we put our project there, we'll provide a means to continue that conveyance so that we don't aggravate any adjacent. We can't do things in our project to offset what already is happening on those properties.
That's what I was trying to get at, is this problem is a current.
Right, and the other important component is that when it rains, under today's scenario, runoff flows everywhere. Under the design criteria that you're allowed to design for, you're allowed to design for a 25-year storm and then have discharge off your property. We've gone above and beyond that. We're retaining all of the stormwater runoff for the 100-year storm. And the difference in rainfall between those is the 25-year storm over that 3-day period is something like 13 inches. We're going to accommodate 16 inches. So that, coupled with our look ahead, the consideration for sea level rise in our designs, makes it a very self-contained, non-impacting project.
If I may, Mr. Chair, can I continue?
Wait, who's that? Councilman Goldberg?
Yes.
Yes, you may continue.
Thank you. In regards to the development timeline, development schedule, I noticed there was some phasing going on in this project. Can you elaborate on, what is the timeline to completion for each phase as well as total completion? the project?
Phase one will commence early next year with the hope and intent of the first CO being issued prior to the end of next year. Phase two will begin in 2022.
October 2022, 2022, yes.
October of 2022, that's Mr. Evia speaking. They will be able to move forward at that time. Phase three will begin at the same time as phase two. There are different ownerships in phase three and they will each proceed at their own individual start dates.
Okay, next we have Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, just a couple more. Is that all right?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, definitely. Commissioner, one second. So Councilmember Goldberg, you recognized for a series of questions, so just take it away.
Thank you. So industrial is going to be the product. Are these dock high? Is that what's going to be throughout this project?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your projection for the type of tenants are Amazon distribution based?
Those type of tenants, yes, logistics as well as some technology and research, distribution centers, e-commerce, et cetera.
Okay. I mean, the one comment obviously related to jobs, because I'm a developer too, and I understand pitching jobs.
Right.
Yeah, you're creating, 11,500 jobs, but on 9.5 million square feet, it's not a huge number for what could be created. But it is good. It's there. It's something that's not there currently, if that's what you're comparing to. But
Correct.
it's not an enormous number by any means for the amount of square footage that's getting created, especially with those types of facilities, which are great. It's what's in need right now. I mean, the demand for us here in South Florida is off the charts for industrial.
Yes, sir. And if I might point out, and I know that.
Goldberg, that's your question, correct?
What now?
You recognized for a question.
Yeah, he's answering.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
And this is really to the point that Councilwoman Ziade raised earlier. In Doral, for example, we have the best logistics parks in the county. They're surrounded by residential development. And the logistics as a use is a much better neighbor than agriculture. Agriculture where you've got the fumes and you've got the herbicides and pesticides and the fertilizer, et cetera. We believe that the logistics neighbors will be much better, much quieter, less impactful neighbors.
Last question, Mr. Chair. In regards to the reduction of ag land, Homestead has been the agricultural capital for South Florida now since, parts of Palm Beach has kind of gone by the wayside. Are you seeing a reduction in the need for the agriculture there? Are these agricultural companies relocating or are they just going away?
This wasn't identified as one of the issues in the staff recommendation, but we did address this at the county commission. This area, these 800 acres are marginally farmable today, and they're only farmable because of the seasonal drawdown, the artificial seasonal drawdown that Mr. Swaycon mentioned earlier. And the testimony that we gave at the commission was that these are marginally farmable areas. They are not year-round, they're seasonal, and they employ very few workers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And there's a question, I just want to address it really quick. Could we have public comments before the motion? And I say no, and the reason why, we want to make sure that the public comments align with what we're doing. And so, Commissioner Furr has a question, and then I'll walk over again what we can do. And so Commissioner Furr, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm going to follow up on the question that Carrie had on the farmland. And I'm trying to find it, but it was zoned as unique farmland. It's not marginal. It's considered unique because of its high performance standards. So, and my question, and part of this goes to Isabel.
Yes.
Because I don't know what our purview is over, I see preservation of water supply and things like that, but I don't see it over farmland.
I don't believe that farmland is identified in our SRPP at this time as a resource of regional significance.
Okay, I'm surprised at that.
So am I.
And I say that because, yes.
1 second, just want to, she said she doesn't think, so let me just verify with Ms. Miskis, our senior planner. Can you confirm?
Repeat the question. I'm sorry, my it cut out for a moment. I didn't hear it.
You can repeat your question for our senior planner.
I was asking whether the farmland, because it is zoned and has a high priority as land, it is considered unique farmland. It is not the marginalized, it is unique farmland. And if through the South Florida Regional Planning Council, part of our job is to protect resources that are available regionally. Is this one of those that we should be protecting?
Absolutely. I mean, but that's a regional policy plan question, and I didn't see in the regional policy plan a specific policy that would require council members to find something.
Okay, thank you.
Christina.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chair Bailey. Chair Bailey.
Sure.
Christina, when we spoke last week, my impression from you was that agriculture was not identified as a regional resource of significance that we're commenting on. Is that correct or not?
I think
that's correct. With you. But yeah, there is a policy in the SRPP that discourages new development in the coastal high hazard area. That's different issue.
That's correct. Any additional questions, Councilmember Furr? But before you go, so there's a couple people who have reached out. They have motions. They would like to make motions. I don't want us to lose. There's a couple members that have to leave. And so if you can just remember that in your questions, I want to make sure that you're in a comfortable place. So go ahead, Commissioner Furr.
Okay,
and next up, Senator Garcia. Yours.
With regard to the BB-SEER, I don't remember all the what they all stand for, but they are in the middle of trying to figure out kind of how to deal with Biscayne Bay. They've just done a huge study, all those kind of things. And I don't know when, I know they had one report that came out, but I think that they were going to be putting forth recommendations, much like I saw that the Miami-Dade is also waiting.
For your question, sorry, I just want to get to your question. Sorry.
I'm framing it. I'm getting there. Is that they are in the process of doing their 10-year plan, but they haven't done that. And I guess my question is, and maybe Mr. Bell might be able to help me on this, are those two going to be in sync with what the BB-SEER is doing and the 10-year plan? Are they working together to try to figure out what is the best way to handle this property, not just this property, this whole area?
Okay, Mr. Bell, you're recognized. Mr. Bell, you're recognized to answer.
In terms of the water supply plan, we have prepared the plan. We are now looking to get a sponsorship so we can move that to the commission. I don't think that's going to address the questions you're asking about regarding the BB-SEER.
The question I guess the follow-up question on that has to do with water treatment and how those canals and all those things that are going into Biscayne Bay. I know that they've got to be trying to figure out how are they doing with septic, how are they doing with all the
question. Commissioner Furr, your question.
Is there going to be a recommendation from the BB-SEER to have water treatment plants or water treatment there on those places.
Mr. Bill, you're recognized to answer.
Correct. In terms of the VVCR, I can't answer in that context. I will say that kind of goes back to the stormwater drainage master plan that we were discussing.
Okay.
That was turned in, I guess, last week, but we have not reviewed yet. So that would be where we.
Mr. Bell, sorry,
Yes, sir.
you think you cannot answer his direct question, so let me make sure. Let's go back. So Commissioner, I'm speaking this up because we're going to lose a few members. We're not going to have quorum, and then we will not be able to do anything. Commissioner Furr, is any additional questions?
That's it. That's it for right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you did.
Senator Garcia, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, and earlier when I asked the question, what has been the historical actions of this board, I don't think I got the real answer on that. But if we're looking at this at the regional impacts, you know, I want to put my personal beliefs aside or my personal decision as a county commissioner aside for a minute and look at this from the regional impacts for this board. We know, number one, that we looked at the water retention program that they have that they're going to have, that's going to capture a lot of this water. The other thing that we look at the regional level, if we look at the regional level, we know the biggest problem that we've always had is the nutrients that have been coming from the agricultural land that have been feeding into the canals, that have been poisoning our canals, and then ending up in Biscayne Bay. We know that issue is going to be addressed. And then when we look at, you know, those are the ones that really have an impact on me. And when we look at the limiting of the pesticides that are going into Biscayne, I think it's really important. But I do want to say this though, you know, we have to be careful in how we start addressing this issue. We're going to start nitpicking on all these little issues and not looking at this as a regional perspective. I think then what each county does, and we might get into some different challenges. And that's why, Mr. Chairman, I asked a question earlier and it wasn't really answered as to what was a historical perspective on how these applications have been handled in the past. So that's why that was my question. And, you know, I'm ready to make a motion as forward to let, you know, let this move forward. I move to let this move forward without any recommendations. Because I think that some of the issues as the regional impacts have been addressed.
Okay, so here we're now where we are. So there's 4 options: do nothing, consistent or inconsistent, transmit without a motion, without comment, sorry. Senator Garcia has moved that we transmit this without comment. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, if you will, you are providing comments. The comments you're providing are the staff analysis that actually measured the application. So if you, by motion, accept a transmittal to the appropriate agencies, including Miami-Dade County, your findings are based upon the staff's analysis. You're not making a finding of consistency or inconsistency, just a transmittal of the data and the analysis, which essentially provides for no formalized comment of consistency or inconsistency, but a finding of the staff's analysis, which you've been debating for the past couple of hours.
Okay, Senator Garcia, is that the motion that you intend to make?
I couldn't hear what he said. I'm sorry.
If you can repeat, so Senator Garcia said he would like to transmit without comment. Mr. Gordon, our attorney, just explained what that says. So go ahead, Mr. Gordon, if you can explain the impact of that motion.
Senator, if I may quickly offer, your proposed motion is consistent with the statute and consistent with the SRPP. What you'll be doing is transmitting the SFRPC's comments on this application, but without a specific finding of consistency or inconsistency, which actually is part of the staff's recommendation. So that to the extent that you would provide delivery and you would transmit, you just simply be delivering without a positive or negative comment with regard to consistency or inconsistency, which I think is compatible with your intended motion.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Senator Garcia has made a motion to transmit without comments. Or is there a second on the motion?
He didn't make that motion. He made a motion to transmit without.
And that's why we wanted to be clear about that.
Right.
Sorry.
I'll second it.
Okay, wait 1 second. So I was not clear. I was in error. So Mr. Gordon, could you please restate the motion? And also for those in the room, could you just allow Mr. Gordon to kind of speak to when we're out of balance or if I'm not hearing correctly? And that way we can make sure that like everything is official on the record and our legal counsel is speaking. So Mr. Gorin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The anticipated or intended motion would be the SFRPC, consistent with section 163.3184, to transmit the staff's analysis of the pending application to the appropriate agencies, including Miami-Dade County, and basically rest upon the comments assessed and the impacts assessed by staff, consistent with the strategic regional policy plan, period.
Thank you. Perfect. And then who's second by that? Councilmember Udine?
Leonard.
Leonard. Second by Councilmember Leonard. Okay, now we will have comments. We'll have comments from the council members, and then we'll open it up to public comment. Is that correct? Mr. Gorin, do we do council members first or public comment?
That's up to the chair, but I would assume you would want to hear public at some point before you take a final
Let's
vote.
do public first. Okay, so now we'll have public comment. So we'll start with our elected officials. So we had two that have asked. Who's speaking?
Chair Bailey, Mayor Colburn would like to speak.
Okay.
Chair Bailey, I respectfully will wait until after we hear the public comments so that we can keep this moving, and then I will make my comments when you open it back up for us.
Thank you, Mayor Diotti. And the reason why I opted for council members to go last, because we'll hear all the comments and it's almost like debate, and then you can vote. So we had two elected officials that were in queue to speak, and they're so far in the chat. Let me get to it. So the first one was Councilman Mark Gregg, from Alan Marada. You can just introduce yourself. 1 second. Our timekeeper will be, is that Kathy?
I'm here. If this is Alicia, Chair Bailey, I can go ahead and keep time if you'd like for 3 minutes.
So it'll be 3 minutes each. And also in 3 minutes, we're just going to go ahead and mute it so we can just, Ms. Miskis, do you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to take a moment to clarify my answer to Commissioner Furr, if you would like me to say that now or a little later, regarding agriculture.
Before the public comment, and that way, when they're speaking, they have all the factual information. So go ahead, Ms. Miskis.
Yes, in answer to Commissioner Farrer's question, there is policy within the SRPP that encourages the retention of agricultural land, but it doesn't specifically point out this particular area as being of unique importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miskis. We're now back on public comment. Councilman Mark Gregg, you're recognized.
Good morning. Can you hear me, please?
Yes. And your time
thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Mark Gregg. I'm a councilman with Islamorada, Village of Islands, crown jewel of the Florida Keys. I'm hopeful that you will deny this approval or application. I have a few reasons. I'll try to be brief and to follow along with some of the comments already made by some of the presenters. The first one concerns water quality, both the surface water runoff as well as the subsurface water usage and impacts. Surface water runoffs from 9 million square feet of warehouse space, parking lots, roadways, within and without of the boundaries of the property that you're considering are going to create far more pollution than the agricultural will. If there are going to be 17,446 people driving to work every day and the associated deliveries that come along with those kinds of things, the runoff from the vehicles alone on the roadways will have a greater impact than what's going on now. I can't imagine that the pollution is just simply going to disappear because it's contained on site and exfiltrates or percolates down into the bedrock. That will migrate beyond the boundaries of the property eventually, just like the salt water is from the FP&L drainage canals. So that, in addition to the floodplain concerns, building something of this size so close to the water during a period of uncertainty caused by sea level rise makes that a significant risky investment, which I don't think merits approval. The transportation issues alone from hurricane evacuation, especially as they affect your friends and neighbors in Monroe County, are going to be a serious contention. The Turnpike has just finished a project widening the roadways there to accommodate traffic, and it seems to have already absorbed what's there, especially during rush hours. I can't imagine this project is going to improve that. Here, a problem that's unique to Monroe County, especially into the Upper Keys, is the fact that a significant portion of our workforce commutes from the Homestead, Florida City area. And when this project, if it's built out, opens up, it will draw away the employment pool, the workforce pool that travels to us, and we will be left with no one to help us operate our community. The environmental impacts, especially as they revert to or relate to SERP, the Everglades restoration, are obvious. Runoff, the groundwater use, the quality of water in Biscayne Bay, as well as in the Everglades, are all going to be impacted. Also, the quality of life just for residents who live nearby. I can't imagine a development of this size is going to make it a nicer place to live nearby. And I think it's going to create more tourism in the Keys because those who do live nearby are going to flee there on the weekends and come and stay with us. That'll be great for our tourism, but I don't think it's a long-term solution to the quality of life issues that we're all facing from growth everywhere. And when you add to that the pending application for the new steel mill, which I think is located either next door or very close by, and the opportunity as a gateway project to open up the expansion of Homestead Air Force Base to commercial cargo traffic, all create an enormous amount of development that I just don't think an environmentally sensitive area like this can withstand. So it is my hope that you, if you're going to do this, to turn this down, or if not, at least impose some conditions to require further information and give us some more time to study this. None of us have had sufficient time to understand what's going on.
Councilman Gregg, thank you so much for presenting today. We just want to make sure that we can actually go on this item, and so we've got to keep everyone to a time limit. But I do really appreciate you coming before and sharing. If you'd like to also email a copy of your comments, feel free to. Also, we can get those to the council members. Next up, we have definitely. Next up, we have Mr. David Webb. Also, if you can remember, if you've heard the comments before, if you can bring new information, that will be greatly appreciated. But try not to repeat what was said already. So, Mr. Webb, you're recognized.
Chair Bailey, Regional Planning Council, thank you very much. I feel your pain trying to do a virtual meeting with public comments, so I appreciate it. Two things. What I drew from the presenters on behalf of the petitioner was two main selling points, and that's what it is. They're selling points. One is creations of thousands of jobs, and two, that we offer a better environmental impact than the farmland that currently exists. I'd just like to address the fallacy of both of those presentations. Number one, it's more likely that the jobs that are created at this proposed industrial complex are going to aggregate people that are available to work that are already working some other job, whether they're commuting down to the Keys to work, whether they're working at the aggregate facilities along the Turnpike, or whether they're working in greater Miami-Dade. If they already, the presenters offered, they're going to offer very attractive benefits and salary. And I think what the reality is most of these projects across the country during my lifetime that promise jobs, they end up just leeching jobs from employers that already exist, forcing people out of business and closing down. So that must be considered. Secondly, the proposition that building an industrial complex is the answer to the restoration of the Everglades is laughable. There is no proposal either from the federal government, the state, or any of the NGOs that the solution to our continuing water pollution and water needs in South Florida is building industrial complexes. The argument that it would be better than the industrial land may be true, but the focus of the BB-SEER project is not to continue the farming, but to take that land and convert it as part of a restoration project. So you wouldn't have farmland, and hopefully you wouldn't have the industrial complex. And the impact on Biscayne Bay, and by virtue of that, my home in the Keys would be immeasurable. So I strongly urge the council to not send this forward with approval. At a minimum, the petitioner can come back at a later date after the South Florida Water Management District has done some more research, and there's much more time for even some of your own council members to review the total impact of this and all the questions that remain unanswered.
30 seconds remaining, Mr. Webb.
I urge you to not send this forward with approval. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Also, our executive director, Isabel, has a quick comment she would like to make. Go ahead, Ms. Carballo.
Yes, through the chair. I think there's a little bit of confusion. It's understandable. It's an interesting process. I want you to know that council staff report neither recommends, there is no approval process going on right now. All we're doing is providing comments. Now, all we're doing is providing comments. There is nothing in the staff recommendation that says consistent or inconsistent with SRPP. Now, the board, it's at the pleasure of the board to change staff recommendation. But our recommendation is very clear. It says transmit this agenda item as comments to Miami-Dade County and the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. Additional information is needed to fully assess potential impacts to state and or regional resources. And we believe that's a reasonable statement given the many questions and input that have been received from important commenting agencies like the Water Management District. That's it. We're not approving or disapproving anything. We are providing comment to the Miami-Dade County Commission, which they requested at their meeting when they transmitted the amendment to the commenting agencies. We are trying to be helpful to the Miami-Dade County Commission and provide this input. So.
Thank you, Mr. Carballo.
Thank you, Chair Bailey.
Sure. Next, we have Councilmember Henry Rosenthal. Councilman.
Okay, can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. There's one thing we can agree upon, that this is a mammoth development. With respect to this project, there's a fundamental and very important question we need to ask ourselves alongside with the current discussions we're having. You see, there will always be more people, there will always be more developers with desire to develop land that is currently untouched and currently be used to produce our food. The real and very important question is, at what point do we realize we have reached a tipping point and enough is enough? There's a reason that the Urban Development Board exists. These developers want to circumvent the law that requires UDB applications to be accompanied by zoning applications, etc., that would allow this mega project to proceed without a definite development plan. Enough is enough. This mega complex replaced 800 acres of agricultural land with warehouses, commercial space, and hotels. The promise that this wouldn't adversely affect the Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve, National Park, and critical wildlife is frankly suspect at best and ridiculous at worst. These plans currently don't meet environmental standards and potentially compromise the drinking water for the Keys. Potentially compromise the drinking water for the Keys. At some point, enough is enough. The creation of new jobs with this development, again, is tentative in terms of numbers. Meanwhile, there's absolutely no advantage to businesses owners in the Keys. Already strapped for help, employers in the Keys would face an empty pool of qualified and entry-level workers who currently have a stable and guaranteed place of employment down here. I applaud the commissioner who wanted to extend this meeting. And by saying so is this statement. Most people believe they have enough information to know that they are right. Few people know when they don't have enough information to know that they're wrong. Having said that, I strongly oppose this mega project. And again, enough is enough. And this is Henry Rosenthal, a councilman with the Village of Islands and Alamorada. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your listening.
Thank you, Councilman Rosenthal. Next, we will have, are there any other electeds that are in the room? Because I think we've exhausted the electeds and, that are appearing virtually. Then none, we'll move to Laura Reynolds.
Hi there. Sorry, trying to unmute my line. Can you all hear me okay?
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks for allowing this virtual ability for comment. I wanted to echo some of the same comments that I've been hearing. I thought this meeting was at 5 p.m. this evening, so apologize for joining late and having missed some of the earlier presentation. However, I've been following this very closely. I am a member of the project delivery team for the Everglades project that's being planned in this particular area. And with that, we're studying the area very closely. And I can tell you that this particular location has been chosen as an alternative, not only to deliver water from west to east, but also because it's at the bottleneck of the 102 drainage basin. The basin of 102 is being farmed extensively, and all of that runoff, that water quality issue that's currently happening, the agricultural drawdown, et cetera, could be solved by the use of this property. And so it happens to be right in the footprint of a very good Biscayne Bay coastal wetlands project. And so I would implore you to not limit our options. I know that the town of Cutler Bay is going to be reviewing this coming up soon. One of the reasons they're concerned is because of that conflict. We're very concerned with the seagrass die-off in Biscayne Bay, especially now we're looking at the southern end of the system and improving that area. This area has the ability to not only bring new water to Biscayne to deal with the salinity issue, but also to deal with the issue of the runoff of nutrients from all the farming in the basin. If this became an industrial site, it would only solve about 5 to 6% of the runoff by taking that out of agricultural production. It would be good to have the balance of having farmlands and allowing us to do restoration. So we need to find balance, and the coastal areas in this region are all we have left. In the northern part of Dade County, we're talking about potentially filling in parts of Biscayne Bay so that we have a coastal buffer. Here, we have the opportunity to actually make the right land use decision so that we don't have to spend billions of dollars to protect the built environment. Because this is so low lying, I would urge you to write comments of concern for all the municipalities in this area that need to be protected from storm surge, sea level rise, and need to plan for the future. This area is coastal buffer, and we need to treat it as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Next, we have Ms. Mead, Ms. Cheryl Mead. Before you go, Ms. Mead, if you're appearing virtually and you would like to provide comments publicly, please just write it in the chat and you'll be called on. Also, you have the ability to email us on our website, which we provide all the information in the packet. So we just want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be heard. We know this is a very important issue. Ms. Mead, we recognize for 3 minutes.
Yes, Chairman Bailey, thank you so much. My name is Cheryl Meads. I live at 89375 Old Highway in Alamorada. I am also a member of the South Florida Water Management District Governing Board. I'm one of 9. I've started my 2nd term. I am not calling today as a representative of the South Florida Water Management District Governing Board. The staff has given you a report. It will go through the normal process that it will go through. I'm calling you as a citizen and as a resident of Monroe County. So I'm a little concerned about some of the conversation here. So I want to give you some numbers. It bothers me, the conversation that we're having about our friends, the farmers, and in Monroe County during the pandemic, when we had to shut the gates and we had no food, it was Homestead that fed us. I want you to know that from the Department of Agriculture's website, Florida provides $426 million worth of tomatoes a year, $867 million of oranges, $237 million worth of bell peppers, $65 million worth of grapefruits, $162 million worth of watermelons, $141 million of sweet corn, and the list goes on. This is one of the most important agricultural areas in our country. And as my friends, the farmers, like to say, blacktop is the last crop. And now I'm sitting here listening. Developers tell us that they're going to clean up water. It's great. It's great. Anyway, I do want to leave you with this. On October 23rd, Governor DeSantis announced that Florida job growth rate is 3 times the national average. So to the people who want to develop this land, it's not jobs we need, ladies and gentlemen. We need workers. And Monroe County, the line between Monroe County and South Dade, that we are so dependent on our friends in Miami-Dade for survival in Monroe County. We are in an area of critical state concern. We have 74,000 residents, but in 2018, we had 5 million visitors. I know you guys love to come visit us, and we love to have you. And if you want to keep on coming, I'm telling you, we depend on you. And if you think driving an hour to work is a bad thing, don't move to Boston. Thank you, Chairman Bailey. I'm grateful for what you guys are doing. And thank you to all the elected officials from Monroe County that are participating today.
Thank you, Ms. Meade, for your comments. We will now have Rick Miller, South Florida Defense Alliance of the South Florida Defense Alliance. Mr. Miller, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Bailey. I'm Rick Miller, Executive Director of the South Florida Defense Alliance. SFDA works to unite, champion, and grow the defense and national security related community here in South Florida. We take a view of issues designed to support our local military installations and commands, balanced with the needs and requirements of our local communities. In that spirit, we express caution that this particular application, without further amendment to limit its precedent-setting nature of policy amendment, creates a situation for further future UDB and zoning change applications that are not fully aligned, may not follow standard review and analysis processes, and potentially creates compliance challenges with Florida statutes requiring prior transmittal to the installation commander of all relevant information relating to proposed changes to comprehensive plans, plan amendments, and proposed changes to land development regulations, which, if approved, would affect the intensity, density, or use of the land adjacent or in close proximity to a military installation. Homestead Air Reserve Base provides a strong existing economic engine for South Miami-Dade County, and the new opportunities there all offer to increase the economic and civilian community support benefits of continued robust military operations at HARB. In this case, any changes that could adversely affect HARB's ability to carry out its current or future missions should be cause for pause and reflection before moving forward. SFDA is in strong support of continued economic development throughout the region, and particularly in South Miami-Dade, but urges that this not only be done in a manner compatible and mutually beneficial with the military missions at HARB and its required military protection zones, but also do not set a precedent for these issues to arise in the future. Chair Bailey, thanks for the time, and I yield back the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Miller. That looks like that concludes our public comments. Are there, Alicia, did I miss anyone?
Mayor Coldiron would like to speak.
Mr. Chair, if you will, briefly, I also have some hard copy emails that were transmitted just before the meeting, which if the chair would permit, they're quick. I can read them into the record or otherwise.
Really quick, Mayor Kodak, we're going to go around with have council comments, and I will start with you if that's fine with you. Okay, perfect. Mr. Gorham, if you will go ahead and read the council comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. An email sent as of Sunday evening at 5:12 p.m. from Eddie Wigham Whiteman, W-I-G-H-T-M-A-N. The question, the comment was vote no. You will have all the reasons in writing before you tomorrow, as well as speakers. Please remember that you were elected to represent the people, not make the developers rich and destroy what's left of South Dade and by extension the Upper Keys. The next comment is from Deborah Willits, Willits. Also, they came in on Sunday evening at 6:17 p.m. to the Regional Council. I reside in Alamorada, and I'm very concerned about the potential damage to the environment that we all love and depend on. I'm worried that our limited water supply will run short. I'm concerned about Everglades restoration, negative impacts to our current quality of life, and too much traffic to handle hurricane evacuation safely. There are numerous extra jurisdictional impacts too. Please deny this project and this zoning change. From Terry Sutton, SUTTON, that came in mid-evening last evening. This development will have a negative impact on the environment, quality of life, and reduction in real estate values, as well as long-term commercial development. We may not see clearly the long-term impact of this, but as our children and their children will suffer. There's plenty of older buildings that are of date and have very poor functioning use, outdated building code requirements, and could be raised. Save your environment, vote against this development. There are many other areas that can be made available and will not have a negative impact on our society and quality of life. And from Tatiana Madden, Maddin, also they came in late last evening, the 24th. I'm a resident of Monroe County, and I'm extremely concerned about the proposed development in Homestead. Development such as this will be detrimental to both the supply and quality of water feeding the Everglades. Additionally, major development such as this poses an extreme danger to the wildlife in that area, all of which are things people are elected to preserve, not to demolish. The dollars are tempting, I'm sure, but dollars can't fix a broken environment and dirty water supply. Dollars don't bring back birds and other natural wildlife and should have never left. Chasing dollars only affords for great mistakes. It can't undo the harm. We know this here in Monroe County because we couldn't stop development in time. Our ecosystem is suffering due to choices made decades ago. You have a chance here to put your foot down collectively and make a difference for generations to come. Please take this chance to be the names that future generations look to as sources of preservation. Please take this chance to stand up for the remainder of our precious environment. Please say no to this development. And there are two more. One is from Suzanne Miller, Miller, which came in through a comment form, but there is no specific comment attached to it. It was just a comment form. Nothing was specifically said. It just was submitted. Doesn't say for or against, and that's the only public comments that came in by email last evening.
Ms. Miller wrote in the chat she would like to speak.
Yes. Ms. Sue Miller, you are our final commenter.
I beg you to write comments of concern about this project. I lived in Alamorada, as the presenters say, 38 miles away from the project, therefore no impact. I beg to differ. This project has potential to make my evacuation during a storm more difficult. It could affect the water supply in the Florida Keys. It will absolutely affect the water quality of our waters that are so critical to our community. The presenter explains that the imbalance that exists in Monroe County between technological uses and agriculturals, let us realize the critical need for agriculture in our food supply. Let's remember that our quality and fragile environment happens to be more prevalent in the South than further north in Miami-Dade, and it survives far better with less density and use. I am really concerned about all of the issues that will impact us. I heard the environmentalists say that they've been building in wetlands for 35 years. Perhaps that's why we're having all these environmental problems. Let's try to keep this property the way it is. Thank you very much for taking my comments.
Thank you so much, Ms. Miller. Just got a message that the presenters would like to speak, but we've provided enough time for the presenters. And so we're
just to clarify the one comment on agriculture that I didn't get a chance to respond to.
I think we're at this point. I think we're fine. We've given you a lot of time to speak, and we just want to we need to kind of get through this meeting. So we gave you much more time than the other presenters. So we're now on to our council members. Mayor Codine, we'll start with you, and we'll just go around each council member. You'll be allowed to speak once, and then we will call the question, the motion that we have. Mr. Gordon, could you just repeat the motion that we have, and so we can know what we're speaking on specifically? Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
if you can.
The motion would be to transmit the staff's comments to Miami-Dade County and any other reviewing agency in accordance with state law, Chapter 163.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor Codine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Bailey. I have to say I'm a little frustrated right now because I had asked to make a motion earlier and you asked me to wait until all the other public comments were made and questions, and then you accepted a motion from Senator Garcia. And respectfully, I disagree with the comments and this motion. I don't believe we yet know all of the regional impacts regarding the drainage and the environment, because that stormwater drainage master plan has not been vetted with all of us. I do know that this project will have negative impacts on the regional resources, and I was going to make a motion asking us to oppose this as I do not see it as consistent with our strategic regional policy plan. I don't feel that it is in the best interest of the BBSR with our drainage, with Biscayne Bay, with the Everglades restoration, with our hurricane evacuation models, and I can go on and on. I'm just saying right now for the record, I oppose this. I yield the floor.
Mayor Codine, let me just apologize to you. I didn't realize Senator Garcia was going to be offering a motion because we were still in a question. So please don't think I would anyway attempt to ignore your motion or your time. And so, but here's where we are.
Understood and accepted.
Sure. And also there's a motion which we don't know if it will pass or not. And so there might be another bite at the apple. And so I apologize again. Next, I'm just going to call all the members we have. Councilmember Udine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After listening to the public comments, I just wanted to reiterate something that our legal counsel said, which I think can bring this in for a quicker landing. I don't think anybody's going to vote to do nothing. We're going to do something today, because if we do nothing, then we just walk out of here and none of the comments, nothing gets looked at. I'm personally not going to vote that this is consistent with anything. I don't think anybody would vote that it's consistent with anything, because we have no information that any of this is consistent with anything. At best, we have incomplete information. So we're left with really only two choices as a board. Either way, we're submitting everything. We're transmitting with all the comments are going either way. The only question we really need, and the only motion that we, in my opinion, really need is when we transfer all of this with the comments, which are going to go one way or another, are we saying that are we saying nothing, or are we saying that this is inconsistent? And really, I mean, when a motion's made, I'm just going to ask if we could just ask that one question. Are we transmitting this with a motion that's inconsistent, or are we transmitting with nothing at all? And that's really the issue that can bring this in for a pretty quick landing. People from the public that spoke on this, I respect and understand.
Wait, who's speaking?
Michael Udine. Commissioner Udine.
Sorry, it looked like someone else started speaking. Your voice changed. I was like, wait.
Oh. I had to cough a little bit, but I'm kind of holding it. Like a fake cough. So anyway, the people that spoke from the public, I respect everything that they were saying. I understand everything that they were saying. I represent Northwest Broward. If we were talking about the Everglades out there, we would get the same type of comment. But unfortunately, what they're saying to us really has we're not voting to accept or deny anything here. It's just how we're transmitting these comments down to the county. So I imagine Commissioner Caldiron or Councilmember Caldiron is going to make the motion that opposite of what Senator Garcia is making, that she wants to transmit it with a motion of inconsistency. So really, that's where we're at. We can bring this to a landing as far as I'm concerned.
Mayor Ziotti, you had a comment earlier during the question period, and so I definitely wanted to get back to you because we want to make sure that we hear your voice or whatever comments that you have.
Thank you very much. I agree wholeheartedly with Vice Mayor Udine that we don't have enough information. And I would rather it go forward with the fact that we don't have enough information and state that on the record than to shut it down and not have a voice in any way, shape, or form, just go forward that way. So my opinion is that we move it forward stating that it is inconsistent. We don't have enough information, and that's how it should be stated. Thank you.
Commissioner Furr, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Ziotti. Commissioner Furr, you're recognized for a comment.
Thank you. I also do not think we have anywhere near enough information. I think the county and Durham has a lot of work on their plate. I will tell you what concerns me the most is the preservation of the farmland. The more I hear of that, I watched 60 Minutes last night. They're losing land in California and everywhere else. It is so important to maintain this supply here. And I think that, I know that's not one of our main things, but it is policy. And I can't help but think this is one of the most valuable resources we have for our own food source. I don't know how you get much more important resource than that. I think I actually appreciate what the developer was talking about and trying to make it. They might be able to make this a little bit better in terms of less water supply drawdown. They might be able to make it so that the runoffs aren't as bad. But those are things that we're going to have to be looking at through BVCR and the tin water storage plan. That's what they're looking at. Right now, I would have this go through with inconsistency. And that's where I'm standing right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Furr. Next, we have Councilmember Goldberg. You're recognized for comments.
I have no further comments.
Are there any other council members that I'm missing? That Senator Garcia, you're recognized for comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate all the conversation and comments that have been had we're having here. But the motion that we have before us is a motion to transmit with the comments, with all the comments of staff and all of our comments. I'm assuming that's what I'm trying to get transmitted out there. And we're looking at the issue of farmlands. You know, the reality is that is a serious issue that all of our communities have. And that is something that we as independent, as county commissions, city commissions should start looking at and finding out a way how we start working together to subsidize some of these farmlands, because that is a problem that we're having here in Miami-Dade County and across the South Florida region. So that I think this is something that maybe we can bring back to this board to have that in-depth conversation as a priority to protect our farmlands, because that is right. I agree with everyone's comment on protecting our farmlands, but unfortunately, we as commissions, our city commissions, haven't done anything to really start preserving some of those farmlands. So I think, Mr. Chairman, I would like to see that moving forward. And the other comment, the only comment that I'll have with this is that, again, the motion is to transmit with comments. We need to be careful now how we react to treat one another, different county commissions or different commissions or some other decisions, because the decision that was before us at the county commission level is to move that it was to move that line, and that is within the urban boundary expansion area. It's not something out west. It's within the expansion area that was created by Miami-Dade County. Whether I agree with it or not as a county commissioner, that will happen. Looking at it now, this is why I asked those questions earlier, and they still weren't answered on how we have treated these applications in the past. So I ask you to transmit the information, to transmit the application forward with the recommendations, with all the comments, and try to respect each independent jurisdiction, because if we start getting into this battle back and forth, then it's going to be a battle consistently on every single item that may happen in Palm Beach, Broward, or Monroe every single time. So I asked to move this forward with the motion that we have on the table right now.
Councilmember Leonard, you're recognized for a comment.
Thank you. It's very interesting. I wear a hat sitting on this council. I also wear a hat as an elected official, but I also wear a hat as someone who used to work down south. And, with the exception, I don't think of anyone here, I worked in Homestead. I was in charge of economic development for the city of Homestead. I ran their CRA and I know the region. And, it's interesting that some of the comments that were made about the loss of jobs in Monroe, when you see the individuals that are in the South that do need quality jobs, I don't think there's exception to say that we should not allow property owners to create jobs at the expense of other areas, like, for example, gentrifying, or continuing to gentrify more dense areas like where I live. These are regional issues that go beyond just environment. That being said, there are some concerns. One is that there's 13 members of the Board of County Commissioners. It's interesting that the 3 county commissioners that represent that region voted against this. I think that's interesting. I also think it's interesting that overwhelmingly the amount of information that we've received is, for the most part, not consistent as far as there needs to be more information. What that tells me is that this is something that needs to be looked at. But overall, this is a home rule issue. And it's a very strong home rule issue. A lot of these issues, as far as what needs to be researched, needs to be decided by the Board of County Commissioners. This is something that needs to go before them another time. There is nothing here that I see other than the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. They were pretty strong in their comments, but again, it didn't seem like their comments were in line with what our job is. One of the concerns that I think is really the elephant in the room that no one's really, mentioned except for Mr. Gorin, is that we're severely limited as to the purview of how we can vote. If this was before my time on this council, the Regional Planning Council had the opinion and the authority to look at more than what we can. So unfortunately, we're by statute, limited as to what we can look at. And there doesn't seem to be that smoking gun that's in a report because it hasn't been created yet. Durham and all these other organizations need to do more work. It's clear to me that we need to transmit it without a specific recommendation of being consistent or inconsistent, because there does not seem to be that here. And staff has not presented us with the information certainly it's not consistent, but it's also not inconsistent. That may not be my personal opinion of what I want as someone who wants to promote sustainability and the environment and all that stuff, but that's not the role that we play here today. And so I seconded it with comment, but to be honest, unfortunately, we are limited. And because of that limitation by state statute, I am in support of transmitting without recommendations.
Thank you, Councilmember Leonard. So we will now, Mr. Gorin, will you please take the motion that has been moved, probably second. We've exhausted public comment. We've allowed the council to speak. And so the motion that we have in front of us is Mr. Gorin.
Mr. Chair and council members, you have before you a lawful motion filed by Senator Commissioner Garcia with regard to the approach to the request of the applicant, which can be legally voted upon consistent with Chapter 163, as I cited to you before, and the regional policy plan on which you rely. And to that extent, the motion is lawfully before the board, and should you choose to adopt it, as suggested, it's certainly legally able to be proceeded with at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Gorin. Ms. Lurch, will you please call roll?
Holdier.
No.
Burr.
No.
Garcia.
Aye.
Goldberg.
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Udine,
No.
Ziotti,
No.
Bailey.
Yes.
You missed me.
Oh, Kaufman,
Oh.
sorry.
No.
No, thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Chair, the main motion is fails based on the count we have.
Has failed. So is there another motion on the table? Mayor Coda.
Thank you, Chair Bailey. I make a motion to transmit with a finding of inconsistencies.
Is there a second?
I second. Mayor Ziotti.
Mayor, the motion has been moved and properly seconded by Mayor Ziotti. Any council comments?
None in the chat?
Any council member comments? Okay, all right, Ms. Lurch, will you please call roll?
Cold Iron,
Yes.
Fur,
Yes.
Garcia,
No.
Goldberg,
No.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Leonard,
No.
Udine,
No.
Ziotti,
Yes.
Bailey.
No.
Bailey,
No. Mr. Gordon, will you please report
The no votes are 5 to 4. The motion fails.
Can I be recognized? I'd like to make a motion that we transfer and we transmit.
wait, hold on.
Wait, who's that speaking? Sorry.
Commissioner
Just want to make
Udine.
sure that.
I'd like to,
Commissioner
Vice
Udine,
Chair. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we transmit with all appropriate staff comments with a provision in the transmittal that we have not been given enough time to make a recommendation of consistency or inconsistency. But we do want to get this all in with all of our comments and all of the agency comments that have been put in there.
I'll second that.
Okay, the item has been approved by Vice Chair Udine, and it sounds like Goldberg seconded the item.
Leonard.
Another one.
All right. Are there any council comments? Seeing none.
Chairman?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead, Garcia.
Chairman, thank you to the council member for that motion. I think that's a fair motion to move forward. And it gathers everything and is consistent with what we can and what we can't do. So I'm perfectly fine with that motion and I'll be supporting that motion.
Thank you. All right, well, Ms. Lurch, please call roll.
If you will, Mr. Chair, that motion as crafted by Commissioner Udine is consistent with your previously existing history with regard to issues of this type, and before you is a legally valid motion to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Good guess.
Cold Iron,
Yes.
Fur,
Yes.
Goldberg,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Udine,
Yes.
Ziotti,
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Matter passes, Mr. Chair and council members.
Okay, before we move to our next item, I just want to thank all the council members for your participation and presenters. It was a respectful conversation. Hey, you guys in the room, please. Your voice is hearing. So thank you. You'll have some items. Thank you all for your respectful dialogue and conversation. We'll now have our financial report. If you're in the room, your voice is carrying you. Could you please beg that we're respecting the meeting?
Sorry about that, Chair Bailey. Some of the presenters were excusing themselves, so just one moment. Sorry about that.
Chair, can I be recognized?
Who's that?
Fur, Commissioner Fur.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Commissioner Furr.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Wait, motion to adjourn? There's been a motion to adjourn. Quick question, Mr. Gordon, do we have to do the financial report now? Or there's no?
No.
Motions to adjourn take precedence over all motions.
Okay. No, I know 100%. There's a point of clarification there. Okay, so there's a move that we adjourned by Commissioner Udine. Is there a second?
We'll fix it.
Yeah.
Her and
Yeah.
her.
The other one,
Okay.
everybody else is gone.
Yeah.
All in favor?
They cleared the room.
Aye.
Without objection, show we are adjourned.
Mario, good job.
Yeah, good job, Mario.
Thank you. Enjoy golf.
Take care.
I know, it's good. Look at my.
I know. Big. Always good to see you.
Wasn't that exciting? Turn off the recording, please. I have to end it, so. Get ready to have